Hi, Pam Washington here from Build My Cleaning Business. So as a coach to cleaning business owners, I get a lot of questions about how to get more or better clients. And so this is actually part 2 of a multi-part series. In the first segment of the series, I talked about prospecting being a continuum, and that prospects may start out as cold, and then you may move them along the continuum where they become warm and eventually hot. And then once they're a hot prospect, that's the point at which they're ready to ask for a proposal. This is particularly true with commercial because it tends to be a little bit of a longer cycle. So in the first video and segment of this article, I talked about cold prospecting. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about warm prospects. And so basically, whether they start out as either warm or cold, your goal is to try to move them along the continuum. So a warm prospect is generally someone who has shown some sort of interest in your service. Okay, so that could be maybe someone who has already visited your website. It could be someone who accepted some sort of a free offer that you had on your website. Maybe you had like a white paper, some sort of a lead magnet, a free report. Maybe you got a lead from somebody that you know where they suggested that you call a certain person or a certain business. Now, a lead is different from a referral. A lead is kind of warm, a referral is typically hot. So we're going to talk about that more in a little bit, not on today's training. Or another type of warm prospect might be maybe somebody that you've met on social media. And so in particular, I've had a lot of success with LinkedIn. So I'd like to recommend that, particularly for commercial cleaning. If you're doing prospecting for residential, of course, Facebook is always good there. The point that I want to make is that these are some of the ways where you might locate warm prospects, and I hope that this is in addition to some other components of a marketing pie. So let's talk for a little bit about what your marketing pie might look like. You may also be generating warm prospects based on articles that you've written. Maybe you have done some speaking engagements. Maybe you've done some direct mail. Maybe you've done some paid advertising of some sort, or perhaps some internet advertising. Maybe you've done some affinity marketing, which is great. Maybe you have a blog. Maybe you have a newsletter. Maybe you do some joint ventures or some strategic alliances. All of these are also ways that you could generate warm prospects. And what I hope is happening is that as you're doing some of these activities, you're generating some warm prospects on an ongoing basis, because that's what will keep your prospect pipeline full and will give you, a regular amount of people to talk to. Now, what I want to talk about, again, I mentioned, that people move along a continuum. So maybe they start out as cold, and then they become warm, and then they become hot. And this made me think of the term a hot date. People talk about having a hot date. So I want to give it to you in the context of dating. I want to compare dating and selling. So I have the dating items over here. You can't really see them all that well, and you don't really need to. They're not for our purposes. But I'm going to compare how dating is similar, because I think it's a really interesting exercise. So let's say, for example, if you meet somebody new and you want to date them, you ask about their likes and dislikes. This would be very similar, let's say, to asking about your client's business profile, your prospect. who their customers are, what their market position is, etc. So let's say when you're dating somebody, you ask them to describe what their ideal mate is, what they would be looking for, in a perfect mate or a date. This would be where you're asking the prospect, basically, how can I sell you? What is it going to take to close this deal? Sometimes when you're in the dating world, you might ask, what kind of dating? Are you looking for casual, just friends, looking to settle down, looking for something long term? So again, what you're really asking here is, why are you taking bids? What happened? And actually this leads right into the next one. What happened to your last relationship? How did it end? Why did it end? How long? So here you're asking about, what happened to the previous vendor? Did they quit? Were they fired? Why? This allows you to find out, the things that will get you fired. Then maybe you're going to listen to all of the things that they say to you. This is really important, guys. Listen and repeat, okay? Because people who understand are likely to buy. And so if you repeat what they've said, then you're clarifying that you heard and understood. And after you listen and repeat, you probe a little bit more, you ask some clarifying questions, and you listen a little bit more. Now, it's only after you do all of that, now maybe you can talk a little bit about you, about your company and your USP. You do not start talking about what you have and who you are and how great your company is at the very beginning. You see, it's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's way down on the list, okay? And then at that point, let's say after you've talked with your date a little bit and you've told them a little bit about you, you tell them how much you enjoyed yourself by, meeting them, and you thank them for going on the date with you. You thank your prospect for meeting with you, for giving you the opportunity to learn a little bit about what their needs are. And then in the dating world, maybe you would ask for another date. With your prospect, now you might ask them, when are they going to be accepting proposals? When could you submit a proposal? Okay, and then after a while, maybe you'll check in again with them. You'll stay in touch. And then just like if you had a date that you really liked and you want to see the person again, you might send them some flowers or candy. With the prospect, I guess this is down pretty low. Maybe you can't see it. So I'm going to erase one so I can write it here so you can see it. This one is the thank you note, which is super important, the handwritten thank you note. Okay, so I wanted to give you sort of a real life comparison between how dating and selling are very comparable. This sort of gives you some food for thought as to how you go about, the transition along the continuum of moving a prospect from cold to warm to hot. This is a really good start. It's very similar to like if you were on a date, you liked the person, as soon as you get in the car with them or arrive at the restaurant, you don't start, groping them and kissing them and, being a little too fresh. You start slow and you go through the process to move along the continuum. And that's the same thing that you do with prospecting, and that's the way that you move them along to hot. Okay? So this is all fine and well from a theoretical standpoint, but it's really important, guys, that you actually implement this that I'm teaching you, okay? I don't want this to be shelf help. I want this to be something that you can implement and use. So that's it for today's lesson, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.